Whenever there's a conversation about how God exists and how do we know that he exists, a lot of theists will say that there's evidence for God, that there's a design in everything we see, there's the cosmological argument, there had to be a first cause, and they could come up with all these arguments, and the other person might refute all these arguments, say that they're unconvincing, that they're fallacious in their premise, that we can't really have evidence for any of those arguments. And once all these arguments have been refuted and declared as unconvincing, the believer will just go on to say, it's you have to take it on faith. It's you believe based on faith. And a lot of times it's preached that faith is a virtue and that it's a really good thing to have faith in something that you believe in. But is faith really a reliable way to truth? Is it a sound way to finding out the truth? At their core, all religions rely completely on faith. Many religions may come up with arguments or evidences that they think that are in support of the existence of God, but at the end of the day, when all these arguments are refuted, all these arguments are unconvincing, they will go on to say, you have to believe on faith. That's really the core of it. You just have to have faith that this thing exists. You have to have faith that it works. Which at that point, we can really see what this thing is. We can see that this is blind faith. You are believing with no good reason. You were just believing to believe because either you emotionally want to believe or some other reason, but there's no actual evidence or reason to believe. So at this point, it's just blind faith. Now, a lot of people may object and say, oh no, it's not actually blind faith. There's evidence. Okay, if there's evidence, present the evidence, and we will go through why the evidence doesn't work, why it does work, and we can believe based on the evidence. You believe because of the evidence. What is the faith for? There's no reason for the faith if the evidence is actually sound and the evidence works. If there's good evidence for something, you will believe something based on the evidence. There's no point to have faith that the evidence is true. If the evidence is convincing, then the evidence is convincing.
When they say that they have this belief and it's based on faith, the natural reaction for many non-theists is just to point out, well, that's blind faith, that's gullibility. And the theists will often react, no, 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 it's not, my faith is not blind, my faith is based on evidence. Well, let's think about that for a minute. If you believe something based on faith, and the faith is based on evidence, then what you're really saying is that your belief is based on evidence. The entire faith portion of that argument, that middle term, can be removed and it changes nothing. Because when you say that your belief is based on faith and your faith is based on evidence, all you're really saying is my belief is based on evidence and I am confident in the evidence. I am convinced that it's reliable and I am convinced that it is sufficient to warrant belief. Which goes without saying, because if you say that you believe something because of the evidence, you've already implied that you're confident in the reliability of the evidence and that this evidence is sufficient to warrant belief.
Faith is also just an unreliable method of believing in the truth because you can just use it to justify belief in anything. So let's say a Christian believes in Jesus based on faith, and another person believes in Krishna, the Hindu god, or Ahura Mazda, the Zoroastrian god, based on faith. If we're saying that faith is a justifiable reason to believe in something, then all three of these people have found the truth, and all three of them believe in the right truth because they're believing on faith. But I would think that a lot of Christians would object to the fact that Krishna or Ahura Mazda is not actually the true one because there's no evidence for them. There's no evidence for them like Jesus Christ. There's evidence for Jesus Christ. Well, if there's evidence for Jesus Christ, if there's evidence for your specific God, then bring up that evidence. There's no point in having faith. If there's evidence for it, then there's evidence for it, and you will believe based on the evidence. This point really bothers Christians, especially because they claim that their God is the one true God. So when this point is brought up that you can really believe in anything based on faith, then it kind of demolishes their whole faith argument because then you can use faith to logically, in their reasoning, you can use faith to justify anything. Okay, I've used faith to justify my belief in Jesus Christ. Okay, I will use that same exact method to believe in Krishna. Okay, which one is the right one? Oh, they're both right. But wait, no, Jesus Christ was the right one. How can you say that Krishna is the right one? Oh, I just believe it based on faith. Okay, that would mean that Krishna is just as valid as Jesus Christ. So, and it's really interesting because you can see that faith isn't used to justify belief in anything else. It's only used with religious belief. In any other situation, faith would not be more viable of a method to find out the truth or to know that something will happen over the evidence. So could someone have just faith that their car will start even though all the evidence is against the fact that their car battery is actually charged and it's actually dead? Will faith be enough to start that car? Is that enough of a reason to believe that that car will start even though you've checked that the battery is dead and you're going to have faith that it's going to start? Is that a justifiable reason? Is it enough to have faith that if we're launching a rocket to the moon that it's going to have enough fuel to reach the moon? Is that enough reason to believe that? Is faith enough to justify belief in geocentrism even though every single scientific thing that has been discovered since that misbelief has proven that that's the wrong view of how the solar system is oriented? I don't think any rational person would say yes to those questions that I just asked previously, but when it comes to religion, it's totally fine to believe huge claims based on faith. And this is where we start to see the fallacy of special pleading on part of religion about their beliefs. Because every other belief we have, like how the earth orbits the sun and not the other way around, has to be justified by evidence, reason, research, logic. But when it comes to religious reasons, when it comes to justifying why we believe in something that is claimed by a religion, oh, it can be based on faith. Faith is enough of a reason to believe. Now, a common argument I've heard against this point by the theist is that atheists actually have faith. People who don't believe in God still have faith. We use faith in our daily lives every day because we're not 100% concrete about what we know. We're not 110% sure that the car will start. We're not 100% sure that the car's brakes will work when we try to brake in the middle of the road. So at that point, we're taking it based on faith that our brakes will work. We're going based on faith that our battery will work. Now, this is just a huge equivocation fallacy, as where the theist is using their faith in a god to justify that their faith is on the same level as an atheist faith to believe that their brakes in their car will work. They're trying to put the ridiculousness of their faith in an invisible, unprovable God at the same level as the faith you would have in your car brakes working. And that's just simply absurd. There's different amounts of evidence that you would need for different things, and actually, the car brakes, there's a good amount of evidence that the car brakes will work. When we're talking about car brakes and why we believe that they will continue to work, that belief is based on a probabilistic, deterministic prediction about how our life has been so far. If you've had this car for 10 years and you've been replacing the brakes regularly and it's always been working, not giving you issues, then it will probably continue to work. There's a probability that it will continue to work. If you check the brakes out yourself, if you looked at everything and met all the requirements that you had to install it, it was new fresh brakes, it was the right brakes for your car, you know that those brakes will work. You have evidence that those brakes will continue to work. You have evidence that those brakes will work when you press on the brake pedal. It's just ridiculous to put this huge, unfalsifiable claim of a God existing, a God that controls the universe, a God that determines everything in the universe, over saying that you have faith that your brakes will work. These two things are not even remotely on the same level, and the other one actually has a decent amount of evidence that we know will continue to work. Now, again, we're going on the presumption that all the arguments for God have been debunked at this point, and this person is just believing based on faith at this point. And this leads us to the conclusion that there's no actual good evidence for God, and you're just believing based on faith, unlike the evidence that is present for my brakes working, and I know my brakes will work because there's some kind of probabilistical evidence that your God doesn't have. So these two are not on the same level. And when this argument is presented to the atheist by the theist, this is just an admission of defeat on the theist's part. They're saying that faith is actually, yeah, an unreliable method, but you use faith too, so we can both be unreliable together. No, that's not even remotely close to how this works. Faith at the end of the day just ends up being blind faith, which I don't know why there's a difference between faith and blind faith. Why would you need to have faith when there's evidence? Just believe the evidence. There's no faith that is needed in any of these. Faith is just a arbitrary thing that has been created by religion to just have a reason to believe something. They just created a reason that's not justifiable, that is not backed by reason, evidence, anything. Faith just ends up being unreliable as a method to figuring out what's true, because you could use it for anything. You could use it to justify belief in anything. So if I said I had a belief that there's a unicorn in my garage and you went and checked it out and you were like, oh, there's no unicorn, I would just say, oh, it's the unicorn disappears every time you go there. The unicorn disappears, it escapes from all scientific observation every time you enter that garage. But I still have faith that the unicorn is there, so that means it's really there. How ridiculous would that be? But when it comes to God, that faith is totally fine. Faith is enough to justify the reason for belief. But anyways, that's pretty much all for this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let's have a discussion down below. Hit the like button if you like this video. If you want more content like this, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next video.